Introduction. The 6 defendants can remain sitting down for now. Joshua Gordon, Ronaldo Baptiste, Marcus Huntley, Jordan Mills-Smith, Melissa Coeli-Dashper and Christina Gineva. You have each been convicted of the murder of Joanne Penney on the 9th of March 2025. You have also each been convicted of participating between the 11th of March 2024 and the 11th of March 2025 in the criminal activities of the RICO OCG, Organised Crime Group. I am sentencing you for these crimes, applying the statutory schemes and the sentencing guidelines. If statutory surcharges are applicable, these will be drawn up. I have received sentencing notes, case law, reports and other materials. I have heard speeches spread over 2 days. I have considered everything that I have been shown and told. Joanne Penney was an innocent victim in a drugs war. She was 40 years old. All she did was open a front door at a friend's house. No period of imprisonment can reflect the value of the life which was taken away by murdering her. The court has heard from her family, parents, siblings and young daughters, all trying to put into their own words how hearts were broken, a light turned off, a history wiped out, a future taken away, an entire family shot through its heart when Joanne Penney, the mother, daughter and sister loved by so many family and friends, was so senselessly taken. For the offence of murder, there is only one sentence recognised by law. It is a mandatory sentence of life imprisonment. Unless I am specifying a whole life order, I must specify the minimum term. That is the term you must serve in prison before you may apply to the parole board, who will decide whether or not it is safe for you to leave prison. Any minimum term must reflect the overall seriousness of the offending, including in combination with the associated OCG offence. After considering carefully the facts of the case and after weighing the aggravating and mitigating factors, having full regard to the features of the individual case means ensuring that the sentence truly reflects the seriousness of the offending and also the individual circumstances of the offender. In relation to guilty pleas, Marcus Huntley and Jordan Mills-Smith each pleaded guilty to the OCG count 2 months after the plea and trial preparation hearing. I will allow a 20% reduction. Ronaldo Baptiste pleaded guilty to the OCG count at the first day of trial, for which I allow 10%. Marcus Huntley pleaded guilty to the murder count at trial shortly after the prosecution had begun to call evidence. For that, I will allow 5%. That available level of reduction does not make the guilty plea an expression of remorse, nor can the timing of ballistics reports justify any more generous reduction. All other convictions were jury verdicts after trials. Joshua Gordon's position on the OCG count at trial does not justify any reduction. As to the sentencing of other defendants, Tony Porter has already been sentenced for the OCG offence. At a later date, Molly Cooper will be sentenced for possessing live firearms and the OCG offence. Callum Kelleher and Sairaj Mann will be sentenced for the OCG offence. Laura John and Donna James will be sentenced for assisting an offender, namely Jordan Mills-Smith. Facts. Where I state facts, I am sure of them, based on the evidence I heard at trial. If I'm not sure about something, I must give the relevant defendant the benefit of the doubt. The shooting of Joanne Penney took place at 6 in the evening on Sunday the 9th of March 2025. 3 female friends were sitting in the living room at number 10 Llys Iltyd in Talbot Green. Melissa Dashper knocked at the front door. The 3 women looked at each other. It was Joanne Penney who was the closest, so she went down and opened the front door. She was immediately shot in the chest by Marcus Huntley using a handgun fired at close range. A 999 call was made immediately. The emergency services arrived speedily. The medics tried everything. They could not save her. The shooting at the doorstep of number 10 was intended by Joshua Gordon and Marcus Huntley, who planned it, to be a decisive show of strength by the RICO group. RICO is Joshua Gordon. His lucrative crack dealing operations had recently expanded into the Cardiff area. That expansion was the idea of Ronaldo Baptiste, who vouched for his Cardiff-based friend Jordan Mills-Smith, who in turn vouched for his Cardiff-based friend Marcus Huntley. All 4 men were in it for the money. To succeed, they needed to find customers and ways to sell drugs. There were many setbacks, but in particular, there was violent resistance from local drug dealer Jimmy Joseph. It happened twice. It had given Jimmy the upper hand. It had seriously blocked the RICO group's drugs trade. It had disrespected Joshua Gordon, putting him down. The doorstep shooting was a reprisal. It was retribution. It was a deliberate escalation. It was to establish primacy, to get Jimmy to back off, all to enable the RICO group's drug dealing to flourish, all ultimately for money. Number 10 was significant. Number 10 was where Jimmy had twice violently resisted the RICO group. Each time, members of the RICO group had tried to sell crack cocaine. Each time, Jimmy had led the way in person. Jimmy had been seen brandishing a gun. He used it to pistol whip a drugs runner for the RICO group, Sai Raj Man. The shooting at Talbot Green was an act of extreme violence by people willing not only to brandish a gun, but actually to shoot someone with it. Marcus Huntley fired the handgun at the doorstep of number 10. He did so intending to kill the person who opened the door. Joshua Gordon, Ronaldo Baptiste, Jordan Mills-Smith, Melissa Dashper and Christina Ginnever each deliberately encouraged or assisted an act of physical violence intending that someone would be caused at least really serious injury, or intending that the perpetrator would act with that intention. Joshua Gordon is aged 28. He was 27 at the time of the murder. By March 2024, he was still co-running a drugs line in Leicester called the Reese Line, supplying crack cocaine direct to users. Those users included Melissa Dashper, Molly Cooper and Sairaj Man. By March 2024, Joshua Gordon was also involved in wholesale buying and selling of white blocks of crack cocaine, half kilos and kilos, supplying Birmingham, Manchester, Coventry and Nottingham. He recruited and used drivers and drug runners. He rented cars for Molly Cooper to drive him around. He did not drive, but he obtained a 2024 registration Volvo XC40, which his young partner Christina Ginnever drove. Christina Ginnever is aged 22. She was aged 21 and 2 months at the date of the murder. Tony Porter was one of Joshua Gordon's drivers. Joshua Gordon made arrangements with Tony Porter by getting Christina Ginnever to communicate with Melissa Dashper. Joshua Gordon liked to stay in the background where possible. He would ride around in the back of Tony Porter's Nissan with Melissa Quayle-Dashper in the front passenger seat. All it cost Joshua Gordon was a modest amount of cash for Tony Porter and a £40 one-day supply of crack cocaine for Melissa Quayle-Dashper. Melissa Quayle-Dashper is aged 40 and was 39 at the date of the murder. Ronaldo Baptiste is aged 39 and was 38 at the date of the murder. He had been a professional drug dealer in Leicester. That's how he and Joshua Gordon had come across each other. Ronaldo Baptiste's drug dealing business was interrupted when he was arrested in April 2021 for the murder of Anand Palmer. Anand Palmer had been one of Ronaldo Baptiste's drivers. Ronaldo Baptiste believed Anand Palmer had become unreliable, untrustworthy and disloyal. He'd stopped driving for Ronaldo Baptiste and started driving for a rival drug dealer. Ronaldo Baptiste's response was to use a decoy and an associate to administer a very severe punishment beating, leaving the dying Anand Palmer in the boot of a car. The facts are described in more detail in the published sentencing remarks of Mrs. Justice Farby, delivered on the 13th of May 2022 at Leicester Crown Court. For that murder, Ronaldo Baptiste is serving a life sentence with a minimum term of 25 years. He has 19 years and 296 days of that minimum term still to serve. His April 2021 arrest and imprisonment did not stop his drug dealing. He got hold of an iPhone in prison. He was able to generate an income using his contacts and brokering deals. He had upstream contacts who were suppliers of cocaine, including crack cocaine. He joined forces with Joshua Gordon. He initiated the expansion into the Cardiff area based on knowing Cardiff-based Jordan Mills Smith from their East London upbringings. Jordan Mills Smith is aged 34. He was 32 at the time of Joanne Penney's murder. He joined the project with enthusiasm. He knew Marcus Huntley from work at the Aldi warehouse. He identified Marcus Huntley as someone who could front up the drug selling in Cardiff. Jordan Mills Smith made arrangements for his grandmother's council house at Bryn Celyn in Pentwyn to be vacant and available for breaking down the drugs. He performed that role and was Marcus Huntley's right-hand man. Marcus Huntley is aged 21. He was aged 20 years and 6 months at the date of the murder. He took up Jordan Mills Smith's idea enthusiastically. He reduced and then stopped his work at Aldi. He relished becoming Rico's local leader. Marcus Huntley was organising the front-line drug dealing and finding premises to sell from. By mid-February 2025, Marcus Huntley had installed himself and an associate, Marek Plachikova, at number 10 in Talbot Green, the house of Katie Summers. Marcus Huntley got to know the local surroundings and the layout at number 10, those stairs down from the living room to the front door with its spy hole and its shallow inside hallway, that outside front porchway with its low adjacent wall, that woodland path directly around the side and the back leading to the nearby McDonald's and Halfords. Then Jimmy struck back at the Rico group for the first time. This has been called the ramming incident. It was Friday the 21st of February 2025. It was at number 10. Marcus Huntley and Marek Plachikova had been selling there for about a week. Jimmy and his associates turned up at number 10. A young male was used to knock the door. They tried to get in but failed. Someone said Jimmy had a gun. Marcus Huntley phoned Katie Summers in a panic. Her friend, Neil Roger Thomas, fetched his car and helped Marcus Huntley and Marek Platchikova escape. In a car chase, Jimmy's 4x4 rammed into Neil Roger Thomas's car, trying to force it off the road, causing £3,000 worth of damage. Marcus Huntley knew this was a warning from Jimmy. Jimmy made sure that Katie Summers passed it on. Jimmy didn't want anyone else selling on his turf. Joshua Gordon, Ronaldo Baptiste and Jordan Mills-Smith were all very well aware that Marcus Huntley had been chased out of drug-selling premises by a local rival drug dealer. Marcus Huntley set about finding alternative places for selling drugs. At this point, Joshua Gordon sent Sai Rajman, his runner and Christine Genova's friend, down from Leicester to Cardiff. At this time, Ronaldo Baptiste was urging Marcus Huntley to get things sorted out. Jordan Mills-Smith recorded a video teasing the new hood celebrity Marcus Huntley, who was on the phone trying to sort out new sales premises. Marcus Huntley arranged for Sai Rajman to be installed at Callum Kelleher's house. But that didn't work. Sai Rajman got arrested by the police for selling drugs. His drugs and his phone were seized. Marcus Huntley then arranged for Sai Rajman to be installed at Donna Kremin's home with more drugs and a new phone, but that didn't work either. Sai Rajman got accused of smoking the stock. After that, Marcus Huntley and Jordan Mills-Smith took Callum Kelleher and Sai Rajman to some woodlands. Marcus Huntley made a video of Callum Kelleher giving Sai Rajman a beating with a stick, with Jordan Mills-Smith also watching on. Marcus Huntley messaged some associates to say, "We made 'em scrap." Joshua Gordon and Ronaldo Baptiste were kept informed of all of these events. It was Joshua Gordon who found out that Sai Rajman had been arrested and told Ronaldo Baptiste. Marcus Huntley sent the woodland beating video to Ronaldo Baptiste, who watched it and was interested in it. The impediments to the Cardiff operation of the Rico Group were all a serious problem. The Rico Group's drug dealing in Cardiff was going to need a breakthrough if it was going to succeed. It was during the period after the ramming incident that the idea arose of Marcus Huntley getting a gun available for use against local rivals. I cannot be sure whose idea that was. But it was one or more of Marcus Huntley, Joshua Gordon and Ronaldo Baptiste. They all knew about it. Ronaldo Baptiste messaged Marcus Huntley on the 23rd of February 2025 to say he foresaw Jimmy starting shooting, smoking, and describing Sai Rajman as defenceless. Ronaldo Baptiste described that as a serious problem for the group. A week later, on the 2nd of March 2025, Marcus Huntley reported this to Ronaldo Baptiste. Joshua Gordon was saying he could get Marcus Huntley a shotgun for £800, which, when it was used, their rivals would really hear. In between those communications, Ronaldo Baptiste had put Marcus Huntley in touch with a London-based firearms dealer who could supply a range of guns at a range of prices. Ronaldo Baptiste sent various messages to Marcus Huntley with various videos and photos of firearms. One firearm which featured was a Smith & Wesson and live ammunition in a brokered deal for an unnamed recipient, where Ronaldo Baptiste could take a hidden cut of £1,000 and Marcus Huntley a hidden cut of £500. I cannot be sure that that was for Marcus Huntley to use in Cardiff, but I am sure that there were other firearms featuring in Ronaldo Baptiste's communications. Marcus Huntley had options for a firearm for intended use against rivals other than Rico's suggested shotgun. I'm sure that the handgun and matching ammunition which Marcus Huntley acquired and then used in the murder of Joanne Penney on the 9th of March 2025 was sourced either through Joshua Gordon's contacts or Ronaldo Baptiste's contacts, or both. I cannot be sure which of these it was. Nor can I be sure what Ronaldo Baptiste meant when describing Marcus Huntley as unwrapping the chutes. I am sure that Ronaldo Baptiste understood Marcus Huntley to mean shooting someone in the legs when messaging about leg shots only, to which Ronaldo Baptiste responded with laughing with tears emojis. The police's DNA testing showed that Molly Cooper had handled the live ammunition which Marcus Huntley buried with the handgun the morning after the murder. That news was received by Joshua Gordon as very bad luck for him. Both Ronaldo Baptiste and Joshua Gordon knew by Saturday the 8th of March 2025 at the latest that Marcus Huntley had succeeded in acquiring a gun and ammunition available for use against local rivals. They each supported that action. They had each taken steps aimed at helping it happen. Marcus Huntley knew he had that encouragement from them both. For his part, Jordan Mills-Smith also knew by Saturday the 8th of March 2025 that Marcus Huntley had the handgun at Brinkellen. He saw Marcus Huntley with it there that afternoon. I am sure that Jordan Mills-Smith did not tell Marcus Huntley to After Siraj Man's drug selling had gone so badly, first at Callum Kelleher's and then at Donna Crimmins, Marcus Huntley was back on the quest for a place for successfully selling drugs. He decided to install Siraj Man in Talbot Green. Joshua Gordon was involved in that too. Katie Summers said no to Marcus Huntley using number 10 again, so they tried to install Siraj Man at the home of Jade Williams, a friend and neighbour of Katie Summers. Marcus Huntley turned up at number 10 with Jordan Mills-Smith at his side at 4 minutes to 5 in the afternoon on Friday the 7th of March 2025. They dropped Siraj Man with his mobile and a small amount of drugs to sell. They left. Katie Summers was straight on the phone to Jade Williams, who came round. Jade Williams then had a phone conversation with Joshua Gordon. They discussed how Jade Williams would be paid if she had Siraj Man selling at her house. That call ended. Jade Williams left without Siraj Man, and that was when Jimmy struck back for the second time. This has been referred to as the spooning incident. Jimmy turned up in person at number 10. Another young male was used to knock the door. This time, they managed to rush in. Jimmy had a handgun. Another man had a Rambo knife. They took the drugs and phone and some cash from Siraj Man. They interrogated him. Jimmy pistol whipped him. They wrongly thought he must have a pack of more drugs to sell. They then forcibly searched inside his anus with a spoon, finding nothing. Before leaving, Jimmy instructed Katie Summers to phone Marcus Huntley to tell him what Jimmy had done, and that is what Katie Summers did. Marcus Huntley promised her that Rico would call her later, and Joshua Gordon did do that. But not before he had been on to an associate called Steps. trying to find the location of the ute who had disrespected Rico for a second time. Joshua Gordon was not going to let it run. He was going to deal with the ute youth as soon as possible. The ute was Jimmy. Marcus Huntley was well aware that Joshua Gordon wanted to hit back at Jimmy. He was expressing the same wish in his gun-brandishing selfie video at 8 minutes to 3 in the afternoon on the Saturday afternoon, describing burning this ute. Ronaldo Baptiste and Jordan Mills-Smith were also well aware by Saturday the 8th of March 2025 of what had happened to Sairaj Mann at number 10. They all knew Joshua Gordon was planning to hit back. The following things happened on Saturday the 8th of March 2025. Sairaj Mann returned to Bryn Celyn. Joshua Gordon had an angry exchange of phone calls with Jimmy, with neither of them backing down. Joshua Gordon decided to go down to Cardiff in person the next day to strike back at Jimmy. He instructed Christina Geneva to ask Melissa Coeli-Dashper if she and Tony Porter would do a trip to Cardiff the next day. They said yes. Melissa Coeli-Dashper would get her usual £40 worth of, Porter would get £100 cash to include his petrol money. They both understood it was a trip to do with drugs. I cannot be sure that Christina Geneva thought any different. Meanwhile, at Bryn Celyn in Cardiff, Marcus Huntley was braced for the attack. He recorded that 8 minutes to 3 in the afternoon selfie video, brandishing the handgun and declaring that he wanted to burn this ute. Ronaldo Baptiste was in the loop. He knew Joshua Gordon was going to Cardiff to strike back at the local rivals. He also knew it was scheduled for the Sunday. That's why, on Sunday morning, Ronaldo Baptiste tried to call Marcus Huntley, then spoke to Joshua Gordon, then sent greetings to Marcus Huntley, not a drug delivery at the weekend, inexplicably by Joshua Gordon in person, not because Ronaldo Baptiste was suddenly worried that someone at the Cardiff end might keep Joshua Gordon waiting, but because Ronaldo Baptiste knew Joshua Gordon and Marcus Huntley were going to mount a violent reprisal aimed at the Cardiff local rival. Ronaldo Baptiste expected it would involve the use of the firearm acquired by Marcus Huntley for that purpose. He was touching base and later monitored how it went. And so on Sunday the 9th of March 2025, the convoy drove from Leicester to Cardiff, Tony Porter's Nissan, with Melissa Coeli-Dashper in the front and Joshua Gordon in the back, Christina Geneva driving the Volvo. After the convoy arrived at Bryn Celyn, there was a period of 2.5 hours. The details of the plan for a doorstep shooting at number 10 were hammered out between Joshua Gordon and Marcus Huntley. I cannot be sure that Jordan Mills-Smith or Ronaldo Baptiste or Melissa Coeli-Dashper or Christina Geneva were in on those planning discussions, deciding on a doorstep shooting at number 10. Joshua Gordon and Marcus Huntley agreed the plan, that Tony Porter would drive there and back, that Marcus Huntley would be the shooter, that Jordan Mills-Smith would be asked to be the lookout, that Melissa Coeli-Dashper would knock at the door, that they would park nearby and use a path to get to number 10 and back. Joshua Gordon also had a side plan of his own. He planned to go along to make sure they went through with it, but he would stay in the car at the back out of sight, and he would get Christina Geneva to take his mobile phones to another location in the Volvo to lay a false alibi. Christina Geneva was at the house at Bryn Celyn for some of the time. She knew there had been the spooning incident attacking her friend Sairaj Mann. She saw him at Bryn Celyn and spoke to him. She wanted to get him back to Leicester, and so did Joshua Gordon. Tony Porter stayed outside Brynkelyn throughout. Joshua Gordon came out and asked him if he would drive two friends to see a friend for £20, which Joshua Gordon paid from his own money. Melissa Quayle-Dashper was in and out of the house at Brynkelyn at several times. She saw Sairaj Man. She was shown the video of Callum Kelleher beating him in the woodland with a stick. She was asked to make a sex tape. Joshua Gordon and Marcus Huntley both asked Melissa Quayle-Dashper to go along and knock on a door. They did not tell her why. Joshua Gordon knew she would agree for a small amount of drugs. That is what Joshua Gordon and Marcus Huntley promised her. Her prepared statement to the police said, "They promised to give me £50 worth of crack cocaine if I did what they asked." Melissa Quayle-Dashper knew that Marcus Huntley had a gun. He showed it to her at Brynkelyn. He told her he had used it to shoot at someone earlier in the day. Two matching spent cartridges were later retrieved by the police from Brynkelyn. I cannot be sure that Jordan Mills-Smith was there when Melissa Quayle-Dashper saw Marcus Huntley with the gun at Brynkelyn. Christina Ginniver was in the house at Brynkelyn for some of the time. Jordan Mills-Smith arrived back from football and was told by Joshua Gordon and Marcus Huntley of the plan they had made. He understood that it was going to be an attack by Marcus Huntley at the doorstep of number 10, with Marcus Huntley using the handgun seen the previous day. He understood he was asked to be a lookout. He also understood that he would be paid £1,000. He agreed. Marcus Huntley left Brynkelyn in Tony Porter's Nissan at 5:35 p.m. on Sunday the 9th of March 2025 with the handgun and live ammunition. He gave Tony Porter directions during the journey. He knew they would use the woodland path around the back. Marcus Huntley went to Talbot Green intending to shoot whoever answered that door. This was striking back at Jimmy. Joshua Gordon knew that was the plan, having hammered it out. It was delivering on what he had decided to do in dealing with this ute. Jordan Mills-Smith also knew that was the plan, having joined it after it was hammered out. He was previously aware that Joshua Gordon and Marcus Huntley both wanted to strike back at Jimmy. Ronaldo Baptiste knew, in more general terms, that Joshua Gordon was going to Cardiff to oversee a violent attack, to show the local rivals not to mess with the Rico group. He was all for it. Joshua Gordon and Marcus Huntley knew that. Melissa Quayle-Dashper left Brynkelyn in the Nissan at 25 to 6 in the evening, believing that Marcus Huntley had brought a gun, understanding that what was intended was some sort of violent attack, and knowing her role was to knock on a door and then stand aside. Christina Ginniver, by the time she drove away in the Volvo at 5:35 p.m. with Joshua Gordon's phones, realised that Joshua Gordon was going with a group and there was going to be serious violence. She realised she was helping by taking the phones and using them. She knew that was what Joshua Gordon wanted her to do. The attack at number 10 then took place. Marcus Huntley, Jordan Mills-Smith and Melissa Quayle-Dashper took that woodland path from McDonald's to the side of number 10. Marcus Huntley and Jordan Mills-Smith wore gloves and used face coverings. Marcus Huntley positioned himself by the low wall, with Jordan Mills-Smith by his side. They both made sure Melissa Quayle-Dashper moved away quickly after knocking the door. That meant her role as a decoy was redundant. Anyone who looked through the spy hole would not have seen her. The door was opened and Marcus Huntley immediately shot at the chest of the person who opened it. He pointed slightly upwards. From less than 2.5 metres away, he was intending to kill. He did not pause, even to see whether he recognised the person. Jordan Mills-Smith was there. He was not surprised by the position which Marcus Huntley took. He was not surprised by the gunshot. He was ready to leave sharply back down the path the moment he heard it. Joshua Gordon stayed in the back of the car. In prison, Ronaldo Baptiste waited for news of how it had gone. In the Volvo, Christina Geneva was using Joshua Gordon's phones as instructed by Joshua Gordon. The Nissan and Volvo returned to Bryn Celyn, where the group gathered with Sairaj Man for 20 minutes. I cannot be sure whether the firearms were packaged up during those 20 minutes, but Sairaj Man's DNA was later found on the packaging. At 7 minutes to 7 in the evening, the cars left Bryn Celyn, making separate journeys back to Leicester. Joshua Gordon and Christina Geneva went in the Volvo straight to KFC. They had Sairaj Man in their car and took him back to Leicester, not because Joshua Gordon had planned to withdraw or scale down his drug dealing in Cardiff. Sairaj Man was Christina Geneva's friend and Joshua Gordon's runner. He had been a multiple failure as a drug seller while under the supervision of Marcus Huntley in Cardiff. At 29 minutes past 7 on Sunday the 9th of March 2025, 85 minutes after shooting Joanne Penney in the chest at the doorstep and 21 minutes after she was formally pronounced dead, Marcus Huntley took out his mobile phone and posed for a selfie. In it, he made a gun gesture with his gloved hand. Ronaldo Baptiste had been monitoring events in Cardiff. By 1941, he had received information that the person who had been shot had died. Ronaldo Baptiste voice messaged Joshua Gordon, describing the death as a huge problem for the RICO group. The upshot was a series of group calls between 4 people. They totalled 4 hours within a 5-hour period through the night of Sunday the 9th and Monday the 10th of March 2025. Those group calls were initiated first by Joshua Gordon and then by Ronaldo Baptiste. Ronaldo Baptiste, Joshua Gordon and Jordan Mills-Smith were scrambling. The 3 of them had expected a shooting, but not a killing. Marcus Huntley and Jordan Mills-Smith had by now vacated Bryn Celyn. Mid-morning on Monday the 10th of March 2025, Marcus Huntley buried the handgun and remaining live ammunition. He recorded a video memory of the burial site. That was enough for the police later to identify the location, search it and recover the firearms. While Marcus Huntley was burying firearms on the Monday morning, Joshua Gordon and Christina Geneva were tracking down Melissa Quayle-Dashper and Tony Porter. Joshua Gordon oversaw Christina Geneva's actions, deleting contents from phones, ensuring Tony Porter's car sat-nav had been deleted, getting and destroying Melissa Quayle-Dashper's wig and clothes from the previous day. Melissa Quayle-Dashper couldn't see why her wig and clothes should be being destroyed. They tried to make her switch to a new SIM card, but she went back to her old one. The shooting at number 10 did not establish supremacy in the Cardiff area for the RICO group. The police were hot on the trail of the defendants. Arrests were promptly made. Phones were seized, evidence was recovered and analysed. It was put before juries here at Cardiff Crown Court. Joshua Gordon. In your case, Joshua Gordon, my choice of starting point is 30 years. That is based squarely on the fact that it was a murder involving the use of a firearm. Where an offence was committed as part of a group, that is generally an aggravating factor. I have to take special care in a case where the use of a firearm by a co-defendant is the basis for the starting point for a secondary party. Your precise role and circumstances as a secondary party can affect your culpability. A participant may not be equally affected by relevant characteristics of the killing. They may not be a full and willing participant. They may not have been aware that the person who used the firearm had it or intended to use it. Careful scrutiny is needed of the position and role of any secondary party. You were a secondary party. You were not the perpetrator. However, in the group committing the offence in this case, you were a full and willing participant. More than that, you were the dominant member. You were aware that Marcus Huntley had a and that he intended to use it, all in the context of a group linked to an organised criminal network of which you were the leader. These are the aggravating factors. First, there was on your part a significant degree of planning and premeditation. You were involved in Marcus Huntley's search for a firearm to deal with Jimmy if the need arose. Your voice messages with steps show you were planning to track down Jimmy and deal with him. After your angry exchanges with him, you made the plan for the Cardiff trip, getting Christina Ginniver to enlist Tony Porter and Melissa Quayle-Dashper. You then hammered out the plan for the attack. During those 2.5 hours at Bryn you recruited Tony Porter to drive and Melissa Quayle-Dashper to knock at the door. You made your side plan regarding your phones and Christina Ginniver. Second, the purpose of the violent attack was to promote your illegal drugs trade in aid of your criminal enterprise. It was about getting the upper hand. It was about money. For you, potentially very substantial amounts of money. Retribution and disrespect were closely linked in this case with primacy and success. I do not treat this as a second statutory qualifying factor of a murder done for gain, but it is a relevant feature of the case linked to motive and culpability. Third, your actions after the shooting, including in concealing evidence. You were joint convener of those 4 hours of group conversations, working out what to do. I am sure you, as leader, were discussing Marcus Huntley burying the firearms. That is what he did before coming to Leicester and joining your runner, Sairaj Mann, at the house of your associate, Ashraf Mia. You were also the overseer when Christina Ginniver was destroying Melissa Quayle-Dashper's wig and clothes, deleting contents of phones. There will be a concurrent sentence for the OCG count of 3 years, 10 months. In the year to March 2025, you were a professional wholesale and retail crack cocaine dealer, enlisting and directing others in the criminal activities of your OCG and acting for substantial financial gain. However, I am not making any further upwards adjustment to the minimum term to reflect overall seriousness in combination with that associated OCG offence. In light of the ways that the OCG, its scale, and your leadership in it have already been relevant, the general principle of totality makes it inappropriate to add further to this necessarily very long minimum term. The mitigating factors in your case are these. First, you have no relevant convictions. Your previous conviction for possession of a bladed article in a public place, committed aged 18 in April 2022, does not relevantly aggravate the seriousness of your offending. Second, the relevant intention in your case was an intention that somebody would be caused serious bodily harm, but not that somebody would be killed. You were deliberately physically detached, waiting in Tony Porter's Nissan near Holford's. But this was the deliberate encouragement on your part of the discharge of a handgun with live ammunition by an untrained 20-year-old at close quarters at the doorstep of a house. That reduces the weight of this mitigating factor in your case. Your sentence. Joshua Gordon, please stand. Joshua Gordon, for the murder of Joanne Penney, your sentence is life imprisonment with a minimum term of 32 years, less 466 days on remand, making 30 years and 264 days. For the OCG offence, there will be a concurrent sentence of 3 years, 10 months. After you have served the minimum term in prison, the parole board will decide whether it is safe for you to be released. If it is not safe for you to be released, you will stay in prison. If it is safe for you to be released, you will be on licence until the end of your life. There will be licence conditions which you will have to follow, and if you break any of those conditions, you may have to go back to prison. Joshua Gordon, you must now go with the dock officer. Ronaldo Baptiste. In your case, Ronaldo Baptiste, I have to decide whether to impose a whole life order or a minimum term, and if so, what minimum term, taking into account the seriousness of your offence of murder in combination with your associated offence of OCG participation. My choice of starting point is a whole life order. That is based on the fact that this was a murder by you as an offender who had previously been convicted of murder. I have had to consider all the factors and all the circumstances. I have done this in what I consider to be a focused and logical way. If I leave aside your previous murder to examine the other features, it starts here. This was a murder involving the use of a firearm. That would mean a starting point of 30 years. You were a secondary party. Your culpability is affected by your precise role. You were detached in location at critical times and in communications, but you were a full and willing supporter of Joshua Gordon's plan to strike back at the Cardiff rivals. You were aware that Marcus Huntley had a firearm and a stated preparedness to use it, to make the rivals hear it, and leg shots only. The group committing the offence was linked to an organised criminal network of which you were a senior partner. Then these aggravating factors. First, the purpose of the violent attack was to promote the illegal drugs trade in the Cardiff area, an expansion which was your suggestion and which was an important potential source of income. Second, you were a joint convener of those 4 hours of group conversations the night after the murder, working out what to do. You were part of discussions about Marcus Huntley burying the firearms. You also got rid of your prison iPhone, with the consequence that its contents could not be examined. Third, your offending was committed in prison. Fourth, leaving aside your previous murder conviction, you have 16 convictions for 35 offences, including several offences of possession of Class A drugs with intent to supply. I do not think these are irrelevant. They would to an extent aggravate the seriousness of your offending. For the OCG offence to reflect your conduct and role in the relevant year, there will be a concurrent sentence of 3 years, 2 months, reduced by 4 months for your guilty plea to 2 years, 10 months. The OCG count would not materially increase any minimum term, given the ways in which the OCG background would already be relevant and the length of the minimum term. On the mitigating side, there are these points. First, you did not do the planning. You did not participate in the planning of Joshua Gordon's Cardiff trip, nor in planning the details for a doorstep shooting. Second, the relevant intention was an intention that somebody would be caused serious bodily harm, but not that somebody would be killed. You were not encouraging a shooting at close quarters at a doorstep. Your communications from Marcus Huntley about the use of firearms had been about rivals who would really hear it, and leg shots only. It is alongside all of this that I then need to return to your previous conviction for murder, for which you had already been sentenced in May 2022. First, I have described the facts of the first murder. It was a very severe punishment beating, leaving a dying victim in a car boot. Its very nature was a violent group reprisal committed in aid of your professional Class A drug dealing. The features of the case were so serious as to take the minimum term from a starting point of 15 years up to 25 years. Second, the two murders are linked in nature and time. You promptly overcame being detached and imprisoned to recommence your professional Class A drug dealing, becoming involved in a violent group reprisal committed in the aid of your criminal enterprise to promote the Cardiff end of Joshua Gordon's drug business, which you had been responsible for setting up. Third, there was no proven intent to kill in the murder by you of Anand Parmar. The same is true here in the murder of Joanne Penney. That means that in both of the two murders there was no intent to kill. I have regard to the clear policy and purpose of the statute when indicating a whole life order as a starting point. I do not gloss the statute. A whole life order has been described as a last resort for cases of the most extreme gravity, where the court is satisfied that just punishment requires its imposition. The alternative is a minimum term. I would need to ensure that the overall effect of minimum terms achieve just punishment to reflect all of the criminality reflected by both murders, and that the overall sentence is proportionate to the offending, having regard to the period that has been served and considering the age at which you could be considered for release. If public protection is a permissible factor when considering the choice between a whole life order and a minimum term, it is not one which makes a difference to the outcome in your case. Your sentence, Ronaldo Baptiste, please stand. Ronaldo Baptiste, for the murder of Joanne Penney, I sentence you to imprisonment for life. I do not consider that a whole life order must be made. I impose a minimum term of 42 years to run concurrently with your existing minimum term, which currently has 19 years and 196 days left to serve. That is the sentence which I am satisfied will achieve just punishment in all the circumstances for the two murders when the sentence is viewed overall. The minimum term will run for 42 years until the 24th of June 2068, when you will be 81 years old and will have been in prison for 47 years. For the OCG offence, there will be a concurrent sentence of 2 years, 10 months. After you have served your minimum term in prison, the parole board will decide whether it is safe for you to be released. If it is not safe for you to be released, you will stay in prison. If it is safe for you to be released, you'll be on licence until the end of your life. There will be licence conditions which you will have to follow, and if you break any of those conditions, you may have to go back to prison. Ronaldo Baptiste, you must now go with the dog officer. Marcus Huntley. In your case, Marcus Huntley, my choice of starting point is 30 years. That is based squarely on the fact that it was a murder involving the use of a firearm. There are then these further aggravating factors. First, the offence was committed as part of a group. The group was itself part of an organised criminal network whose local leader was you. Second, there was a significant degree of planning and premeditation. You had been actively involved in the search for a firearm to be equipped to deal with Jimmy if the need arose. After the spooning incident, you knew of and shared Joshua Gordon's wish to deal decisively with Jimmy. Your selfie video more than 24 hours before the shooting was you, with the murder weapon, declaring your wish to burn this ute. You knew about Joshua Gordon's plan to come to Cardiff, you knew its purpose, you knew the layout and surrounding area of number 10. You were in the house at Bryn for those 2.5 hours, discussing the plan with Joshua Gordon, and then, when he arrived, with Jordan Mills-Smith. You were one of those who asked Melissa Quayle-Dashper to knock at the door. Third, the purpose of the violent attack was to promote the illegal drugs trade in aid of a criminal enterprise, where you were the local leader. This was about primacy and money, and potentially a substantial income for you. Retribution and disrespect were closely linked to primacy and success. This is not the qualifying factor of a murder done for gain. It is a feature of the case linked to motive and culpability. Fourth, there are your actions after the shooting, including in concealing evidence. You went the next day to Heritage Park and you buried the handgun and live ammunition. There will be a concurrent sentence for the OCG count of 3 years, reduced to 2 years, 5 months for your guilty plea. In the year to March 2025, you were involved in the activities of retail crack cocaine dealing as local leader for Joshua Gordon and Ronaldo Baptiste's expansion into the Cardiff area. You were finding premises and arranging selling, all for financial gain. I'm not making any further adjustment for the associated OCG offence to reflect overall seriousness in combination in light of the ways that the OCG count has been relevant already. The general principle of totality makes it inappropriate to add further to what will necessarily be a very long minimum term. As to mitigating factors, first, you have no relevant convictions because I do not consider that they relevantly aggravate the seriousness of the offending. You have 4 previous convictions for 5 offences, most relevantly possession of a bladed article in a public place, committed aged 18 in December 2022. Second, there is your age and maturity. Joshua Gordon was 27. Ronaldo Baptiste was 38. Jordan Mills-Smith was 32. You were 20. I do not consider that you were relatively immature as a 20-year-old. You were a confident leader who, for example, overrode Jordan Mills-Smith as to when the woodland beating of Sairaj Man should stop. But your age and linked maturity impact on your culpability. Sentencing courts must recognise that young adults, 18 to 25, are still developing neurologically and may be less able to limit risk-taking, and that evidence suggests ongoing development in maturity well beyond age 21. You were significantly and materially influenced by Joshua Gordon as the dominant member of the group. Your sentence, Marcus Huntley, please stand. Marcus Huntley, for the murder of Joanne Penney, your sentence is life imprisonment with a minimum term of 32 years. Reduced by 5% for your guilty plea to 30 years and 146 days, from which are then deducted 466 days on remand. That means your minimum term is 29 years and 45 days. For the OCG offence, there will be a concurrent sentence of 2 years, 5 months. After you have served the minimum term in prison, the parole board will decide whether it is safe for you to be released. If it is not safe for you to be released, you will stay in prison. If it is safe for you to be released, you will be on licence until the end of your life. There will be licence conditions which you will have to follow. and if you break any of those conditions, you may have to go back to prison. Marcus Huntley, you must now go with the dock officer. Jordan Mills-Smith. In your case, Jordan Mills-Smith, my choice of starting point is 30 years. That is based squarely on the fact that it was a murder involving the use of a firearm. The firearm was used by a co-defendant. Your precise role and circumstances as a secondary party affect your culpability. Careful scrutiny is needed. You were aware that Joshua Gordon and Marcus Huntley wanted to strike back at Jimmy. You were aware that Marcus Huntley had the handgun. You expected him to use it. The group committing the offence was linked to an organised criminal network. You were a member, but you were not a leader. In the group that went to Talbot Green, you were a willing participant, but you were not a full participant. You were in a secondary role, watching out. There are these aggravating factors. First, the purpose of the violent attack was to promote the illegal drugs trade in aid of a criminal enterprise from which there was a potentially significant income for you. The attack was closely linked with primacy and success. This is not the statutory murder done for gain, but a feature linked to motive and culpability. More immediately, you understood that you stood to get £1,000 specifically for going and being the lookout. Second, your previous convictions are relevant and do somewhat aggravate the seriousness of your offending, albeit with the weight being reduced by the passage of time. You have 3 convictions for 6 offences. You committed a robbery in May 2010, aged 18, for which you were sentenced to 15 months in a young offenders institution. You committed offences in July 2013, aged 21, of possession of 2 handguns and 5 rounds of ammunition, and of a sawn-off shotgun with 2 cartridges, whose nature is reliably reflected in the sentence of 4 years imprisonment. As to your actions afterwards, I'm not sure that you were directly involved in concealing evidence relevant to the murder. You were not in any leadership role in those group calls. There'll be a concurrent sentence for the OCG count of 2 years 10 months, reduced from 2 years 3 months for your guilty plea. In the year to March 2025, you were involved in the activities of retail crack cocaine dealing, making possible Joshua Gordon and Ronaldo Baptiste's expansion into the Cardiff area, making premises available, breaking down drugs, and acting as Marcus Huntley's right-hand man, all for financial gain. However, I am not making any further upward adjustment to the minimum term for the associated OCG offence to reflect overall seriousness in combination. Given the ways that the OCG has been relevant already, the totality principle makes it inappropriate to add further to what will necessarily be a very long minimum term. The mitigating factors are these. First, the relevant intention in your case was an intention that somebody would be caused serious bodily harm, but not that somebody would be killed. You assisted Marcus Huntley as he discharged a firearm at close quarters at a doorstep, but you were a late joiner to that specific plan of a doorstep shooting. Second, there was a lack of premeditation or planning on your part. This was Joshua Gordon's plan, made with Marcus Huntley. You knew about their general desire to hit back at Jimmy. That was them. You joined their specific plan for a doorstep shooting on your return from football after they had planned it. Your sentence. Jordan Mills-Smith, please stand. Jordan Mills-Smith, for the murder of Joanne Penney, your sentence is life imprisonment with a minimum term of 27 years. Less 464 days on remand, making 25 years and 266 days. For the OCG offence, there will be a concurrent sentence of 2 years, 3 months. After you have served the minimum term in prison, the parole board will decide whether it is safe for you to be released. If it is not safe for you to be released, you will stay in prison. If it is safe for you to be released, you will be on licence until the end of your life. There will be licence conditions which you will have to follow, and if you break any of those conditions, you may have to go back to prison. Jordan Mills-Smith, you must now go with the dog officer. Melissa Quayle-Dashpan. In determining the minimum term in your case, the appropriate starting point is 30 years. That is because this was a murder involving the use of a firearm. Your culpability is affected by your precise role and circumstances as a secondary party within a group. Yours was a subordinate role, acting under direction. You went and knocked on the door, albeit that your decoy role was ultimately redundant and unneeded. You hesitated to get out of the car and had to be prompted. You were told where to go and what to do. You were easily suggestible, lacking the strength, resourcefulness, or the character to refuse or withdraw. Your focus was on getting a small amount of crack cocaine. You were aware that Marcus Huntley had a gun. You realised that it was his intention to do someone really serious harm. But it is not right to describe you as a full and willing participant. Having given careful scrutiny to your role, I am satisfied that it will be appropriate to make a substantial downward adjustment to reflect your culpability in light of the precise way in which you were a secondary party. I assess that there is some degree to which the seriousness of your offending is aggravated by your 9 previous convictions for 18 offences, including 1 conviction for possession of a bladed article and offensive weapon in a public place in May 2022, when you were aged 37. These are the mitigating factors in your case. First, the relevant intention in your case was an intention that somebody would be caused serious bodily harm, but not that somebody would be killed. Harm was not your intention, but you appreciated it was the intention of others who your actions assisted. In your case, this is a significant factor for which a substantial adjustment is appropriate. Second, I accept that you have remorse for your actions. Third, there was a lack of premeditation or planning on your part. You were not involved in the planning on the Saturday in Leicester or on the Sunday at Brinkellen. Fourth, your involvement was an exploitation of your vulnerability. In early 2025, you were recognised by social services as a vulnerable adult. In the period to December 2024, you have been you acted for little financial gain. You were doing jobs for Joshua Gordon, always in return for being supplied with a small amount of drugs, just your daily amount, worth about £40. In return for that amount of crack cocaine, you would go where Joshua Gordon asked and you would do what he asked, as you did at Talbot Green during the murder. Sixth, you have had significantly difficult background and personal circumstances. As a child, you were a victim of a serious violent crime, the nature of which I have been made aware of. You have had long periods of homelessness, resulting in exposure to unsafe environments and exploitation. Your 2 children were taken into and remained in local authority care following a serious mental health crisis in 2005. You have a long history of mental health difficulties. For the OCG offence, there will be a concurrent sentence of 22 months. Your minimum term does need to be increased by an amount which is appreciable to reflect the OCG offence. During the calendar year to March 2025, you did Joshua Gordon's bidding in his drug-dealing operations for small single-day deals of crack cocaine. With your vulnerability exploited, you would ride around with him and Tony Porter. You would fetch and carry for him. You knew it was all to do with drugs. Sometimes it involved blocks of crack cocaine. So, to a small degree, your minimum term will be increased to reflect the OCG offence. It is distinct criminal conduct not being taken into account in other ways. Your sentence. Melissa Quayle-Dashper, stand up, please. Melissa Quayle-Dashper, the minimum term in your case will be 14 years, less your time on remand. I calculate that you have served 466 days. Your minimum term from today is 13 years and your minimum term from today is 12 years and 264 days. For the OCG offence, there will be a concurrent sentence of 22 months. I'm pausing because I will check later that I have done the subtraction right, that I've got the sums right. So your minimum term from today is 12 years and 264 days. Melissa Quayle-Dashper, you must now go with the dog officer. Can we just pause again, please? Can she come back, please? I just need to add this. After you have served the minimum term in prison, the parole board will decide whether it is safe for you to be released. If it is not safe for you to be released, you will stay in prison. If it is safe for you to be released, you will be on licence until the end of your life. There will be licence conditions which you will have to follow, and if you break any of those conditions, you may have to go back to prison. Melissa Quayle-Dashper, you must now go. Now go with the dog officer. Christina Geneva, in determining the minimum term in your case, the appropriate starting point is 30 years. That is because this was a murder involving the use of a firearm. As a secondary party within a group, your precise role and circumstances affect your culpability. You had the limited, distinct and detached role of taking Joshua Gordon's phones and using them, acting under his direction, to help him if he needed to say he was with you. You had limited awareness or understanding. You appreciated that there was going to be serious violence, but you didn't know about a doorstep shooting or that anyone had a gun. It is not right to describe you as a full and willing participant. After careful scrutiny, I am satisfied that it will be appropriate to make a substantial downward adjustment from the starting point to reflect your culpability in light of the precise way in which you were a secondary party. There is this aggravating factor. After the event, you were active in the destruction of evidence. Now knowing someone had been shot dead, it was you who made sure that contents from Melissa Quayle-Dashper and Tony Porter's mobile phones and his sat-nav had been deleted. You collected and destroyed Melissa Quayle-Dashper's wig and clothes. But you did it to protect Joshua Gordon, and he was overseeing it. There are these mitigating factors. First, the relevant intention in your case was that somebody would be caused serious bodily harm, not killed. You appreciated that others who your actions assisted had that intention. In your case, this is a significant factor for which a substantial adjustment is appropriate. Second, you have no previous convictions recorded against you. Third, I accept that you have remorse for your actions. Fourth, there is your age and immaturity. You were 21. Young adults, 18 to 25, are still developing and may be less able to evaluate the consequences of their actions, with ongoing development and maturity extending well beyond age 21. You were also a relatively immature 21-year-old. Fifth, there is your vulnerability. An imbalance and insecurity enabled Joshua Gordon to influence you. Social workers had assessed you to be a vulnerable young person. You had a history of exploitative relationships with risky individuals, struggling to see situations as dangerous, with a repeated pattern of vulnerability to manipulation, to say and do whatever you were being asked by older men. A local authority was specifically concerned, as at July 2024, about coercive and controlling elements to your relationship with Joshua Gordon, and that you unquestioningly did and said what he told you. Sixth, there was a lack of premeditation or planning on your part. Joshua Gordon did not include you, whether in Leicester on the Saturday or at Brinkellen on the Sunday, in the details of his planning. When you passed on the Saturday request to Melissa Quayle-Dashper and Tony Porter, you did not know Joshua Gordon's purpose. Seventh, you acted for little or no financial gain. You did not get anything or expect to get anything from taking the phones or from any violence. Nor were you in on an income from Joshua Gordon's drug selling. When he got you to pose for a photo surrounded by bundles of cash, that was his cash. You lived in a flat together, but he had moved into your flat. Your finances were separate. You had a significant burden of personal debts, but he didn't swoop in to remove them. You still owe £6,000. Eighth, I have read about your significantly difficult background and personal circumstances. You were taken into care from an age of 12. You were in secure accommodation. At different times, you were assessed as vulnerable to child sexual exploitation. As a child, you were a victim to a serious crime of whose nature I am aware. You were recognised for becoming a passive partner in unequal relationships with older, predatory men. You've had 2 babies, both of whom were removed from your care. The latest was in July 2024, which was assessed as triggering an increase in risk-taking behaviour. I know the circumstances relating to your children. I have considered the impacts and implications for them. For the OCG offence, there will be a concurrent sentence of 10 months. During the calendar year to March 2025, you participated in the activities of Joshua Gordon's OCG. He decided what arrangements to make with drivers who were driving for him. You passed on messages from him and to him. To a very small degree, your minimum term will be increased to reflect the OCG offence. It is distinct criminal conduct not being taken into account in other ways. Your sentence. Christina Geneva, stand up, please. Christina Geneva, the minimum term in your case will be 12 years less your time on remand. I calculate that you have served 466 days. Your minimum term from today is 10 years and 264 days. For the OCG offence, there will be a concurrent sentence of 10 months. After you have served the minimum term in prison, the parole board will decide whether it is safe for you to be released. If it is not safe for you to be released, you will stay in prison. If it is safe for you to be released, you will be on licence until the end of your life. There will be licence conditions which you will have to follow, and if you break any of those conditions, you may have to go back to prison. Christina Geneva, you must now go with the dock officer.